From Little League to the big leagues and everywhere in between. From one stage to another. Passion is my middle name. I'm J.J. Davis. This is In Focus. And I first met this guy, 6th floor Memorial Stadium, Husker football press conferences. Yes, he remembers. And since then, I've raced by him a few times, courtside at Creighton basketball games. And then, of course, I've seen him at the College World Series, on the field, in the booth. And I always seem to remember him stepping in and out of the elevator and me standing in the back with a camera over my shoulder, sweating like a pig. And, of course, everybody knows him from Big Red Wrap-Up. Joining me right now is a guy that everybody knows. Now he's on the Big Ten Network, Fox Sports. Joining me right now is 9-time Nebraska Sportscaster of the Year, and what I believe to be just a slice of the pie that is the pride of all Nebraska. That's right. Play-by-play wizard, Kevin Kugler.
That's a wonderful introduction. I'm not sure it's merited, but I appreciate it, JJ. Thank you.
What did I miss?
You didn't miss anything. I mean, I am here. I've been in Nebraska most of my life.
That's correct.
Nebraska is my home.
Do you believe this? Can you believe what's happened to you when you hear all these things said about you, when you read all these things said about? Can you believe it?
No, and I'm being 100% honest with you. I have done more in my career than I ever expected coming out of the University of Nebraska. My hope was to someday secure a job as a play-by-play guy for a team. That was what I was like. Could I be the voice of Iowa State? Could I be the voice of somebody? And that was what I was hoping for. I mean, it's just been an amazing ride.
Did you play sports as a kid? What were your dreams growing up?
I mean, I will tell you, I didn't start as a broadcasting major. I was a business major in college. I thought I always loved sports. That was always, I was passionate about it. I didn't have the athleticism to do anything that I could make any money on it.
Right.
And so I thought if I wanted to be involved in it, I had to be involved in it from some other side, and my first path was the business side. I thought I would be a sports agent.
Correct.
Years later, where I clearly am not a sports agent, years later, Matt Millen, I told him this story, and I said I was going to be a sports agent, and Matt Millen looked at me and he goes, Kev, you would have been a terrible agent. You would have been awful. I would have walked all over you. I'm like, oh, okay, so I guess I went in the right path.
Now, you've gone on record as saying, I wasn't exactly a child prodigy.
No.
So you go to the business college, then you decided early on, as you've said, yeah, this isn't for me.
Yep.
What happened when you moved over to the J School?
I found a home, and that was, I found a place in the J School that I felt right at home with. I felt at home with the people. I made lifelong friends. I found something I was passionate about. I was not somebody who could show up and be a suit-wearing, briefcase-holding person.
Yeah.
That was just not something I
know
could
that
do.
feeling.
Yeah, I mean, I walked in there one day and I saw everybody in the business college had briefcases and suits on, and I couldn't be that guy.
Right.
I couldn't be an 8 to 5 in a cubicle person, and so I had to figure out a different path.
All right, months before you graduate, he gets his first play-by-play gig. What was it?
It was, so first broadcast gig, sidelines at the Shrine Bowl. First play-by-play gig, high school volleyball on Nebraska Public Television. The very first thing I did.
And I think you said I was awful.
Oh, I was terrible. I was awful on the sidelines. I mean, brutal. At one point, Martha Florence, who was one of the producers at the time, worked forever at Nebraska Public Television, great human being, had to come out to me on the sidelines of the Shrine Bowl. She walks up, sticks her hand out like this, and says, you have gum in your mouth. You cannot have
That's
gum
right. That's
in
a
your
rule.
mouth.
That's a big rule.
I didn't know this. I'm wearing sunglasses. I'm chomping on gum. She's like, and I had to literally spit the gum out in her hand. That's how my very first broadcast went, spitting gum out in Martha Florence's hand.
All right, you graduate.
Yep, luckily.
Fairbury, Nebraska, York, Nebraska, sports director, memories.
Oh, many memories. Excuse me, I'm all choked up. Fairbury, Nebraska lasted 6 weeks. I was there for 6 weeks. It was a terrible experience. I could not, I will tell this story now, it's years later. The owner of the station, I will not name his name, you can look it up.
That's right.
Came in so my job was to produce the sportscasts and do, I didn't get to doing play-by-play there. I started in the summer, I was manning the board for Royals games.
Right.
And I walk in one Saturday morning, they didn't invest in the AP wire, so I had to get the early edition of the Lincoln Journal-Star.
Right.
After I watched SportsCenter that morning to get the late scores, and I'm going through the Journal-Star trying to write up a sportscast, and the guy walks in and he goes, "Who's got the sports page?" And I said, I do. I'm trying to get my sportscast ready. He goes, "Nobody's listening anyway." And he takes the paper and goes into the John. And that's when I realized that was not the place for me. So I got a job in York, Nebraska, and I went into his office and I quit. And he looked at me and says, "This is the worst decision. You're going to regret this decision for the rest of your life." I have not.
Trust me, I have been there before.
I bet.
No doubt about it. I've been there before. Moving along to the Omaha Racers, 96, Old Exarban, UNO football, UNO basketball. How did you grow during those formative years?
The Racers experience is one of the best experiences of my life. I was young. I was currently at the time dating a young lady who would eventually become my wife. I got the chance to meet people that are to this day still, I consider family. The Tebows, Mike Tebow and his wife Nancy and their kids, they're family to us. And it was one year that I had the chance to do a lot of different things. I was not only the broadcaster, I was the PR director, I set up a table, I did all this different stuff. It was a great growth experience for me. And then the Racers folded, and I had to figure out my path again. And I went 3 years just kind of meandering, trying to figure out, could I stay in the business? Should I leave the business? What should I do? Then the opportunity came up to do UNO football and basketball on the radio. And that was really the opportunity for me to stay in the business, continue to learn my craft, grow as a play-by-play announcer, and then that led to an opportunity to do a sports talk show in Omaha.
Exactly. On the radio.
Yes.
1620, baby. Almost 12 years on sportsmanlike conduct.
We had the chance to do something different on the air, and Neil Nelkin, who is one of the architects.
And everybody knows Neil.
Neil is one of the architects of so many careers in the state, and is certainly one of the architects of my career. And we had the chance to put me together on a sports talk show with a guy named Bob Bruce, who is still a good friend. And Bob and I were very different, are very different. I had never done a sports talk show. I thought I knew sports.
We all do.
But I didn't know sports talk. I didn't have opinions. I was a play-by-play guy.
Right.
I just called what was in front of me.
Right.
Bob had to teach me basically, in his own very abrasive way, how to do this in a different way. Because it wasn't sports talk like it's normally done. We did it more like a morning show. And that was Bob's influence. And to this day, I give Bob all the credit for teaching me how to not be a play-by-play guy, but to be a sports talk guy, because it's a very different thing.
Correct. Have we ever met a person in the business who's not abrasive?
No. Everybody's got ego. Everybody's got their abrasiveness. Everybody's got this in this business. But it's interesting to see how different people make that work for them in different ways.
Exactly. So the College World Series comes along, 2004?
Yep, correct.
Okay, 2009 NCAA football, 2011 the Big Ten Network.
Yes.
Football, basketball.
Yes.
How did you evolve doing that big time over the years?
It was an evolution. I mean, that's the best way to put it, because in 2000 I'm doing UNO football and basketball. I'm starting the talk show. And then I evolved through that, and I learn how to be a better play-by-play guy. I learn how to be a more outspoken broadcaster. And then I get the chance to work for Westwood One, and I learn how to do things on a bigger scale.
Right.
And then Nebraska joins the Big Ten, and I send off an email to Mark Halsey and at the Big Ten Network, and I get the chance to expand my role there on television and learn how to do TV,
Correct.
which is different than doing radio, which is different than doing sports
Correct.
talk. So it was just a matter of And I needed those steps. Everybody's journey, you know this, JJ, everybody's journey is different. And some people burst onto the scene as a 25-year-old and they're right at the top of their game.
Yeah.
I needed the steps. I needed the path. I needed to walk that walk to learn how to be whatever it was I was going to become.
All right, now you walk the walk when it comes to preparation. One guy said, he's the most organized guy I've ever met. Another guy said, he is absolutely in charge of every second of every day. And you yourself have said, yeah, I'm a prep junkie.
I am, and that's what I learned early. That was the learning because I walked into this going, okay, I'm probably not ever going to be Vin Scully, but
nobody is.
No, but nobody is. But can I prepare to do the job?
Right.
And it all came up. Look, it was a UNO lesson. UNO football, one of the first games I did, we were on the road, lost power in the booth. So the stadium is dark, but the power to my kit was still working. And so we were still on the air. And they had played roughly 4 minutes of the first quarter. So it wasn't like there's nobody in the studio.
Right.
So I had 45 minutes of I have to fill before they can get the lights back on. If you're not prepared for that, it can be a very awkward 45 minutes.
That's what radio does for you.
Absolutely.
Okay, in television, I used to say, if you can't read the prompter, then you shouldn't be there. Radio, you got to learn to ad lib. You got to bring out knowledge and be yourself, and to be able to communicate.
You have to have a conversation.
Right.
And whether you're with someone in the booth or one-on-one with the person, listen, radio is much more of an intimate medium. Even though TV has your faces and you're in the room, radio is you and me, ear to ear.
That is correct.
Voice to ear. Mm-hmm. TV is, you're bringing everybody into the room.
Well, I used to say in television, you have to make love to the camera. You can't talk, you can't scream at the camera.
Sure.
You have to talk to the camera.
Yeah.
Same with radio.
Radio, you don't have that picture. So while I'm talking to you, I have to tell you what you're not seeing.
Tell a story.
I have to paint the entire picture. You know, if you're watching this, you can see our mugs, but you can understand.
I don't know if that's a good thing.
Yeah, no, I would argue it's not. But on radio, I can be anything. You can imagine whatever you want to imagine on radio.
So you have gone on and said, both on radio and television, my hobby is my work. Sum it up.
My passion, hobbies should be your passion. If people are passionate about golf, people are passionate about this. Right. I have two passions, my family and my work. Those are the only things that have really driven me. And that is, I don't have a ton of hobbies because I enjoy what I do. I prep, I go do games. My work is other people's hobby. So when you have free time, you go to a game. When I have free time, I usually don't go to a game because that's where I spend my time. Right. But, I mean, I get to be on the playground that everybody else uses as their hobby.
Well, that's what I say when I shoot. I get to cover games.
Right.
I mean, I get to shoot games. Speaking of games, to me what sums you up is this. Huskers win the Big Ten baseball tournament. You put out a tweet last week to Greg Sharp, immortal play-by-play voice of Nebraska, battling cancer. And you said in congratulating the baseball team, resiliency isn't just relegated to the team on the field, but to the guy in the booth. Congratulations, Greg. And to me, that sums Kevin Kugler up. Well, you haven't forgotten who you are.
Well, I mean, Greg is one of the best people in this business, and Greg's battling right now. Mm-hmm. And for him to have, I mean, think about this. Greg Sharp is the voice of Nebraska football and the voice of Nebraska baseball. But in his tenure, there have not been those moments that other voices have had.
That's right.
In his tenure, because Nebraska athletics is in this trough right now where they've not been able to have those big moments.
That's right.
And Greg, in the midst of this battle, gets to have this moment to call a championship.
That's right.
As he's battling chemo, as he's battling cancer, as he's fighting to stay in the game for his family and for the love for his passion, he was the first person I thought of when I made sure to listen. Is he there? He's there. He gets to call it. He's in place. That was the first thing I thought of, and I was so happy for him.
And to me, that sums you up. Kevin Kugler, like I said, a slice of the pie that is the pride of all Nebraska. I want to thank you very much for coming on today.
No, it's my pleasure.
You're a good man.
Oh, it's good to see you.
Coming up next, from a guy who calls the plays to a play and a director of such, on the other side. So, I'm going to audition for this play called Babe the Sheep Pig. I go into this small little room. I audition. I read a couple of times, and by my standards, well, nothing's ever really good anyway, but I said, that stunk. So the third time, I read for this you named Mom. And I said, Ma. And I said to myself, let it go. Threw all my cares to the wind. Let it go. Next thing you know, 3 days later, I forget all about it, because when you walk out of an audition, at least for me, you always think you stink, nothing's going to happen, blah, blah, blah. I get this message on my phone. It's from Matt Gutschick offering me the role of Ma. I'm astounded. I'm incredulous. I'm any adjective you can think of. Well, joining me right now is the artistic director of the Rose Theater, Matt Gutschick. Do you remember that?
Oh my gosh, this is like a legendary audition in my memory, because the scene that we read, the sheep was supposed to be sick. It said that in the stage directions, and I couldn't get over the degree of commitment you had, because you put this sheep not just sick, not just needing a veterinarian, but on death's doorstep. And so the cough that came out of you before even a line was said, I was like, oh, this is it. This is, because I had never seen the character that way.
Yeah.
And that's how you know you're in the presence of an actor you can work with.
Flattery will get you everywhere. Speaking of everywhere, you just got back from Cuba. What was that all about?
It was awesome. I got to go there because the Rose Theater is actually part of a larger consortium of theaters for young audiences in the country.
Right.
And then the American chapter of that organization has international chapters everywhere. They had their World Congress in Cuba. It was the first time it's been held in a North American country in, I think, 50-ish years. So the opportunity to go there, have an official letter that made it a little bit easier to get into the country, even though we could all go there as tourists now, made me feel like it was just an opportunity that was too good to pass up, and it was incredible. It was just amazing. I mean, I was only in Havana, and Havana itself, you could see the echoes of Spanish colonial architecture, Art Deco architecture. The neighborhood that I actually stayed in was supposedly built by the American mafia trying to launder money back in the day.
Interesting. That's an interesting story.
Verdado. Yeah.
Now, you're the artistic director of the Rose Theater, children's theater. Why children?
So to me, the range of stories that are available in children's literature, and this is true in children's television too, just seems really, really wide. You can do a show that's set on a piece of cheese just as easily as you can do a show that's set in outer space.
That's right.
And so to me, the opportunity to, from show to show, work in totally different storytelling styles was really exciting to me. And then of course, as you can imagine, somebody in this line of work would have, I believe that teaching kids and building them up and pouring into them pays long-term benefits to our community.
Which begs for me the question, what were you like as a kid?
I was always playing pretend as a kid. And I really wanted to, as soon as I found theater, I loved changing roles every time I could be in a show, being somebody completely different. My first play I was ever in, I was Eeyore. And the director, I think I was like 8 years old, and the director worked so hard to get me to do anything with commitment.
Right.
So that finally, you know, of course, on opening night, I let loose on the hee-haws and everything. So it was like, okay, I guess this is a really fun line of exploration. So just continued with that my whole life. And my mom was a sculptor, so she always asked us, I have two brothers, she always asked us to have one artistic activity in the mix. So I liked playing basketball.
Yes.
And so this was kind of my negotiation with her, but I ended up loving it more than anything else.
Your mom was a ceramic artist. I
Yeah.
mean, she introduced you to the arts. But you said later that when you found out about plays, storytelling structure. It was electrifying to you as a kid, even at that young of an age.
It was. And to me, it's particularly because the way that we talk to one another, the way that we learn about one another, is generally through storytelling. It's things that have happened to us, things that we experience together and can relive through story. So that to me just hit something really primal in my brain, I think. And it was because I was always playing pretend as a kid anyways, it made sense to do that with other people and to have a script that would structure that play.
Were you like your mom?
Was I like my mom?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think a little bit, in the sense that, our senses of humor can veer towards the darkly comic. And, she would talk to herself as she would work. And I always
Heck, I've
thought
done
it
that
was,
as an old guy.
oh my God. I always thought it was so funny to hear her saying things from 2 rooms away.
Yeah.
And, I'd ask her, hey, what are you doing? She's like, oh, just talking to the smartest person I know. Talking to herself. I just thought that was so great.
Well, speaking of the smartest person, you graduate from Wake Forest, Bachelor of Arts. You take a business course, and you take this course, Performance, Poetry in Performance, taught by the American treasure, Maya Angelou.
She was incredible. The first assignment, and you could actually fail the class, JJ, if you didn't do this. You had to memorize your classmates' names by the second day of class, by the second class meeting. And her whole point with that was that remembering someone's name takes a relatively small amount of effort,
Right.
but they are going to experience you remembering them as a huge gesture of hospitality and care. And she just expanded from there.
And you said it's the small things that she taught you, because when she came into the class that first day, you said she knew everybody's names, and that was just the beginning.
She did, and she would always call us by our last name. So I was always Mr. Gutschick.
Oh.
And there were times where she would teach with a carafe of water, and sometimes it would be a little a mug on a stool next to her. And there was one day where she said, Mr. Gutschick, would you please pour me a drink? And I get up and I go and I carefully pour her drink. And as soon as it's water, she just goes, oh no. And I thought I was in trouble. I thought I spilled or something. She looks at it and goes, I'd hoped it was bourbon. So she had a great sense of humor, in addition to being an incredible poet, and of course also an artist who was building an entire identity around lifting people up and pouring into them.
So you graduate, you go work for a children's theater in North Carolina, Tar Heel country as I call it, because I used to work in ACC country. And then you decide that you want more. You want to learn more about the intricacies of theater, children's theater. You go to Yale. You get your MFA from Yale University. How did you grow from that experience?
So the first year, I don't remember thinking it was all that much fun, because we were learning about all the different functions of the theater. And so one of the things that I was assigned to do was help artists find settle them in their apartments that the theater was paying for, and organizing flights and everything. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is not exactly what I want to do with my life. What am I learning here? And it ended up being one of the most valuable experiences, not only through just the sheer force of the humility that it pressed upon me, but also an appreciation for the fact that artists who are making their living going from theater to theater across the country, or from even film to film, the conditions that allow them to show up as professionals need to be met. They need to be cared for as dimensional human beings. And so having an assignment that first year that was all about that was really interesting to me. And one of the coolest artists that I got to help was Mandy Patinkin. He was doing a show at the Yale Rep.
Yes.
And talk about somebody who, I'm the guy getting him more pillows and lights for his apartment, but he, as famous as he is, he remembered my name.
That's incredible.
So the connection between that and the Maya Angelou thing we were just talking about, I was like, this is a person who understands how to engage with other people.
It's given you much more depth, much more of a wide variety of how to handle things in the theater.
Absolutely. So the opportunity at Yale to be exposed to really rigorous art, theater that I might not have otherwise bought a ticket for myself prior to going to grad school, sort of again helped expand the sense of the possible to me, and what it means, what excellence means. It redefined that for me.
Well,
and trying to bring that as much as we can into our work at the Rose, where hopefully if you come to the Rose, you're going to see a show that might feel familiar in some ways, but that is going to push the envelope in other ways.
But that's the thing for me. You said you're attracted to plays that really scare you or stretch you. And to me, you sound like an actor.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that that's the number one thing about kids that we always go back to as a staff at the Rose is they can handle it because they've already experienced it in their imagination, whether it's the highest of highs, the lowest of lows, deepest tragedies. This is all part of the human experience, and therefore it is a part of childhood.
And kids, as we all know, are brutally honest. And you've said children can impact the world.
Absolutely. We firmly believe that they are the best critics for theater, but that also if we are sharing with them a story that is empowering, that they're going to go back into their school environment, into their family environment, and be better and ask for better.
What kind of guy is Matt Gutschick? Because you talk about this, how you expand your horizons in theater and the voice of children. What kind of guy are you?
What kind of guy? You know, since I became a dad a year ago, I think everything changed.
It changes everything, doesn't it, Matt?
It really does. That old idea that, you know, it's like watching your heart be on the outside of you,
Right.
walking around in the world vulnerable.
That's a piece of you.
It's so true. But then also the commitment to trying to make a better world for my kiddo. You know, knowing that the field that I am currently working in is one that will serve him at some point.
Correct.
You know, it snapped me into the long view. Things that extend beyond my own lifespan, however long that might be. You know,
However long this is going to be, when we think of the question, fill in the blank, Matt Gutschick is
I am a family person first and foremost, and I think that makes sense through the lens of my career, working for a theater that serves kids and families.
Do you feel like the Rose is an extension of you?
Yeah, very much so. I'm very lucky to serve the Rose, and it's another example of a project that predates me and will long outlive me
Right.
and anybody else who works there.
You know,
Because
that's what I've learned in life, not just through theater, but in sports. You know, I've been a handheld camera guy, all that stuff. Life goes on. They're going to hold events after you're gone. You're just part of it. You're just a piece of it, agree?
Oh, absolutely. We get to contribute while we're there. We get to serve while we're there. And hopefully we make the place that much better.
Well, for my money, he has, you have. And from the bottom of my heart, I want to thank you for coming to see me today and talk about the Rose Theater. I've been in the room with this guy. I've been in the space. I've been rejected by this guy. But hey, that's theater, right, Matt?
It sure is.
I want to thank you for joining us today, and thank you all for tuning in with me and Matt Gutschick and the gang, and hopefully I'll see you around town. So for the latest edition of In Focus, I'm J.J. Davis along with Matt Gutschick. I'll see you around town.